Hello and welcome, it is Connor here from Luxia Smart Homes, and today we're going to be looking at my top 3 heating automations. Now the reason that these are my top 3 is because they are really convenient and they do everything without the need for me to interact with them. So I never have to interact with the thermostat, I never have to do anything at all. These automations take care of the whole heating for me and it is brilliant. So let's begin by having your heating turn on when your alarm goes off. Now this is one of my favourite ones because it is dynamic. Now normally you put your heating on a schedule, so you'll say it comes on at 7 o'clock in the morning and then it goes back off again at 8 o'clock or whatever. However, with this automation, the heating will only turn on when your alarm goes off, okay? So your heating will be turning on at the exact moment you wake up every single day. It's not just turning it on at a set time, it's turning it on when you need it to come on. So here is the automation, and you can see we've got a trigger, we've got a couple of conditions, and then we've got an action. So let's begin with our trigger, which is a template trigger, and just a simple value template. I'll leave this in the description so you can copy and paste. Just make sure to change the sensor here. So our sensor is our phone alarm. Now, I've got an Android. I don't believe you can do this with an Apple device, but there are ways around it. I can create a separate video for that to show you how to do it using iOS. But for Android, you should have a sensor which will be your phone's next alarm. So that's the sensor that we're using here. And then what we're doing is we're actually doing a little bit of an offset. So I don't have it set up to go off when my alarm goes off. I actually have it set to trigger just 30 minutes before my alarm goes off so that the heating actually has time to warm up the house. So here we're checking when our phone's alarm is set, what time it's set for, and then here we are then taking half an hour off that, okay? So if my alarm is set for 7, the heating is actually going to turn on at 6:30 instead. Now this 1800 is just seconds, so that is 30 minutes. So if you want to up this to be an hour, you can just simply change this 1800 to a different value, okay? If you want it to be lower, just change that 1800. Again, it is in seconds, so little conversion there, and you can figure out what this needs to be. So then moving on to our conditions, we've got 2 conditions here. Now the first one is confirming a time range. So I'm checking that it is after 6 o'clock in the morning, but before 10 o'clock in the morning. So the reason that I'm doing this is because this template trigger up here, which is our phone's next alarm, doesn't just take into consideration our time alarms, but it also takes into consideration calendar events. So if you've got an event in your calendar, you will probably get a reminder that says, you know, in 30 minutes you need to be doing this. You know, you've got a Zoom meeting in 30 minutes or whatever it might be. Now that actually counts as an alarm, so it will actually trigger this automation, and we obviously don't want that to happen. So what we're doing is we're just checking that it is definitely between 6 and 10, so that it is only getting triggered in the morning when our alarm's gone off. Again, if we've got other alarms set throughout the day that we might be using for other things, we don't want it to be triggering the heating, we only want it to be doing it in the morning when we're actually going to be getting up. So that is what this condition is doing. Now our next condition is confirming that I am actually at home. Again, a really important condition because we don't want this to trigger if I'm not in the house. If I'm away, if I'm on holiday, if I'm at a friend's house, wherever I might be and my alarm goes off, I don't want the heating to be turning on in the house, okay? I want to make sure that I'm definitely home before the heating turns on, because again, I don't want to be wasting energy by unnecessarily heating the home. So another reason that this is much better than just a simple time schedule, because again, if you're not in the house, your heating isn't going to know that. And if your schedule is set for 7 o'clock in the morning, it's going to turn on at 7 o'clock in the morning, regardless of whether or not you're in the house. Now finally, we've got our call action, and that is simply to boost the heating. Now I use Hive, so I actually have an action which, if I type in here boost, you can see we actually have the Hive boost heating action, and that's what I'm using here. So it will actually turn the heating on for a specific time period. Now depending on what heating system you're using, you may need to use a different type of call action here, but if you're using Hive, you can use this boost action. Now to use it, we just To use the boost action, we select the thermostat that we want to use here as our device, and then we set a time period. So I've put it on for half an hour. So 30 minutes before my alarm goes off, it will boost the heating for 30 minutes. So when my alarm actually goes off, the house will already be heated to where I want it to be. So for this next automation, you're going to need to set up and configure the proximity integration. Now, in a recent update, they allowed you to do this through the UI. You used to have to do it through the configuration.yaml, but now you can just set it up like you would any other integration within the interface. So just head to your devices and services, add integration, look for proximity, and then select the proximity integration, and then you just need to do a couple of things to get this set up. Firstly, select the zone you want to actually track the distance to. So we're going to be tracking the distance to our home zone. Insert the people or the devices that you wish to track, and then set a tolerance distance. Now, I usually set this to 50. Now, this tolerance distance, I believe, is in meters, and it just filters out any small kind of GPS changes to stop any kind of false alerts and to make sure that it's actually tracking you correctly. So just set the tolerance distance to 50. That's usually where I set it to, and everything seems to work perfectly. And then if you want to set up some zones to ignore, you can, but this is just optional. You don't need to do this, so we can just leave this blank and then hit submit. Now you've set that up, you will have a new entry under the proximity integration, and if we take a look, you can see all of the different sensors within this new entry that we've set up. So you can see the different people that you're tracking, and you can see who is closest to the house and what their direction of travel is. So I've actually arrived and I'm 0 meters away because I am at the house. But Tez, you can see, is actually 6,310 meters away, and his direction of travel is away from home. So whatever he's doing, he's currently heading away from the house. So these sensors are great, and they offer loads of information for you to use in automations, and we're actually going to be using them to see when we are heading home and then turn on the heating based on that information. So inside the automation, we have got a trigger set up, and this trigger is utilizing the proximity integration that we set up. So if I just quickly show you how to add this in, you would do an add trigger, and then you would look for a state trigger, and then in the state trigger, you're going to look for the proximity integration that we just set up. So it will be called proximity.home or whatever it is that you set it up as. So we're going to be doing proximity.home, and then in here we can define the attributes that we want to be listening for. So the attribute that we want to be listening for is the direction of travel, okay, and then what we want it to be is we want it to be towards, okay, so our direction of travel is going to change to towards. And then we're just going to do a quick timer, and we're going to do for 5 minutes, okay, so if our direction of travel is towards the home for 5 minutes, this automation will trigger. So we're basically confirming that we are actually traveling back to the house. So now we're going to come down and we're going to add in an action, and it's going to be a wait for trigger action. And what we're going to be waiting for is for our home proximity sensor to fall below 12. Okay, so we want it to be below 12 miles from the house, and then when it is 12 miles from the house, it is going to boost the heating. So what's happening here is we've got our trigger set up, which is our direction of travel, so we can detect when we are traveling towards the house. When we've been traveling towards the house for 5 minutes, we are then going to wait for the direction of travel to fall below 12 miles, so we know that we are now within close proximity to the house. And once we are 12 miles away from home, we are then going to boost the heating again using that Hive boost heating action. If you're using a different heating system, you may need to use a different action, but using this, we can then select our thermostat, we can select the time period, and we can select the target temperature. So now when we are traveling towards the house and we get within that 12-mile radius, it is going to turn on the heating. Now technically this could false trigger because you might be heading towards home, you might get within that 12-mile radius, but then in reality you might actually be driving past the house to a different location. So you could add another action in here, which is a notification that would tell you that the heating has been turned on, and then when you get to your actual location, you could just turn the heating back off using the app. Now, I don't actually get any false triggers with this. Maybe I'm just lucky, I don't know, but this works perfectly for me and for when I'm driving around. I've, like I say, never had a false trigger, but it is possible that you could get false triggers, so adding in another action with a notification can help you counteract that. And finally, we've got our automated heating schedule. Okay, so this is the schedule that I actually use for my heating. I don't use the inbuilt schedule in the Hive app. I don't have any kind of time schedule set up. I use this automation to control how the heating turns on and off. So for our triggers, we've got two numeric state triggers, and I've given them a trigger ID. So this is our day temperature, and then our second one is our night temperature. So within our day temperature, we've got our entity, which is the hallway thermostat, and we've got our attribute, that is the current temperature. And then what we're doing is we're checking to see if the current temperature falls below 17.5. Now, this temperature may not be good for you. You may need to change it to something else. Maybe it needs to be lower or higher. It just depends on your house, how big it is, how long it takes to heat, loads of different things. I've changed this number loads of times just through trial and error, and this number is perfect for my own house. Again, you might need to change it for yourself. So that is our day temperature trigger. If the thermostat falls below 17.5, it will trigger the automation. Now, our night temperature trigger is exactly the same, hallway thermostat, current temperature, but we're seeing if it falls below 15. So I don't want it to be heating the house up to a really high temperature during the night, but I also don't want it to become freezing cold during the night. So again, this value here, 15 degrees, is perfect for my house and my situation. Anything below 15 degrees, it becomes a little bit frosty. So I like to keep it above that to make sure that things are still nice and warm during the night. So moving on to our conditions, we are checking if multiple things are true. Now the first thing that we're checking is to make sure that the heating isn't already on. So I'm checking the hallway thermostat, and I'm checking the condition of the hallway thermostat, which is a specific preset mode. So I'm seeing if the thermostat is already in a certain mode, and I want that mode to be none. Okay, because I don't want it to be doing anything. I don't want it to be on. I don't want it to be heating the home. Now we're going to check the numeric state of the home zone. So we're checking the home zone, and we're checking if it is above 0. Okay, because the home zone will report a number. It might be 0, it might be 1, it might be 2. Whatever that number is, that is the number of people within the house. So we're checking to see if the house is actually occupied. If it's not occupied, again, we do not want this automation to run, so it won't do anything. Now, at the minute, if we actually test this this condition, you'll see it passes because the heating isn't boosted and the numeric state is above 0 because I'm in the house. So at the minute, if the temperature at any point falls below 17.5, it will pass this condition and it will move on to an action to actually boost the heating. So our action is a typical choose action. You know that I love to use choose actions, and we've got two options. Option 1 for our day temperature and option 2 for our night temperature. So option 1, we've got a couple of conditions in here. First condition is to a triggered by condition, and it is to check that it has been triggered by the day temperature. Okay, so this option is for our day temperature setting. Now, the second condition is a fixed time value, so we're checking to see that it's after 9 o'clock in the morning, but before midnight, and that is when the day temperature will kick in, so that's 17.5. So if the temperature falls below 17.5 degrees between 9 o'clock in the morning and midnight, then the heating will kick in, which is what our action is doing down here. Again, using the Hive Boost service, we are selecting our hallway thermostat, we're setting a time period, and then we're also setting the target temperature. So when the temperature falls below 17.5 degrees, and both of these conditions pass, the heating isn't on, and someone is in the house, it will then come down here, and it will turn the heating on for 45 minutes. Our second option is for our night temperature, and it's essentially a copy and paste of our first option, which is for day temperature, except our triggered by is the night temperature trigger, so we're triggering for below 15 degrees now, and we're confirming that the time is after midnight but before 9 o'clock in the morning. So that is our nighttime period, okay? So any time between midnight and 9 o'clock in the morning, the heating will only turn on if it falls below 15 degrees instead of our daytime temperature of 17.5. And then if all of that passes and it's below 15 degrees and it's nighttime, then we will boost the heating for 45 minutes at 22 degrees. Again, this automation just runs in the background, does what it needs to do without me needing to interact with anything. I don't need to interact with the thermostat, I don't need to manually boost things, I don't need to worry about freezing to death during the night. It's not wasting energy, it's not turning things on unnecessarily, it's making sure people are in the house, it's making sure that the heating isn't already on, it's checking everything it needs to check to make sure that the heating is getting turned on at the right time every single time. And actually through the Hive app you can check your energy usage, and after enabling this automation and using it for a couple of weeks, my usage actually decreased by 35%. So the automation is definitely saving me energy. Again, you might need to fiddle around with temperatures to make sure that they are correct for your house. Same with how long you turn the heating on. You might not want it to be on for this long. You can turn it on for short periods. Again, all just depends on your own home, how long it takes to heat up, etc, etc. So just play around with it, change the values around, make it your own. So there we have it, our top 3 heating automations. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so that I can catch you in the next video.